Welcome to this explainer. Okay, let's dive right into this, because today we are exploring an absolutely incredible, literally mind-bending concept. We're going to take the hard mathematical rules of statistical mechanics and apply them directly to, well, the human experience of the mind. And our goal today is to explain this simply. We want to break down a fascinating framework that suggests the ultimate states of human consciousness might actually just be governed by the basic laws of physics.
So, can thermodynamics explain spiritual enlightenment? It's a wildly provocative question, right? Because on one hand, you've got thermodynamics, the strict, totally physical study of heat, energy, and molecular states. And on the other hand, you have spiritual enlightenment, or what some call non-dual awareness, which is this deeply subjective, profound human experience of absolute unity. But what if these two worlds collide? What if the exact same physical rules governing a simple physical system perfectly describe what's happening inside the brain of a meditating monk?
To really make sense of this, we first need to ground ourselves in a super basic physics concept. In statistical mechanics, you have what's called a two-state system. You can think of it like being on the ground floor versus being on the first floor of a building. Now, separating these two states is an energy gap, which we represent by delta E. I want you to picture this energy gap as a literal wall, or maybe a really tall fence. It's a rigid barrier. Unless you have the energy of an Olympic hurdler, or in this specific case, thermal energy, you just aren't getting over it. Without that specific amount of energy, the system is strictly constrained by this wall. Let's move to and see how this builds when we introduce heat into the equation. We're going to break this down into 3 simple steps. Step 1 is the low temperature limit. At this point, thermal energy is minimal. The system just doesn't have the juice to climb that fence, so it settles entirely into its lowest energy ground state. It's completely locked in. Step 2 is the transition. As we turn up the temperature, the thermal energy rises, and the system starts fluctuating, occasionally getting just enough energy to hop the fence. And finally, step 3 is the high temperature limit. This is where the heat is cranked to infinity, and the thermal energy completely swamps that original gap.
Let's look a bit closer at what happens at that high temperature limit. The Boltzmann distribution completely flattens out. Now that's really just a fancy physics way of saying the statistical probabilities level out entirely. Extreme thermal energy acts like a massive flood flowing completely over our metaphorical wall. Because the flood waters are just so incredibly high, the wall underneath effectively doesn't matter anymore. The system can no longer feel the difference between the ground state and the excited state. Both sides of the wall are equally accessible because the barrier itself is completely submerged in energy.
Section 1, the phenomenological bridge, mapping physics to the mind. And this brilliantly illustrates how we can cross over from physical temperature right into human consciousness. We are directly mapping the physical world to the mental world. That physical energy gap we talked about, our rigid wall, well, that becomes our mind's conceptual boundaries. And that physical two-state system, that becomes the classic mental division between subject and object. You know, the barrier between me and everything else. Basically, every single time you distinguish yourself from your environment, your car, your desk, the person sitting right next to you, your mind is actively relying on a conceptual energy gap to maintain that boundary. So, we're really looking at 2 vastly different ways of experiencing reality here. On the one hand, we have the low energy state. This is our everyday, ordinary dualism. You can picture it as a frozen landscape of sharp boundaries and mental rigidity. But contrast that with the high energy limit. This is pure open awareness. It's a fluid, boundless flood, where the distinct states are totally swamped, leading to what's known as the non-dual collapse. Let's break down exactly what each of these actually feels like.
Now, here's where most of us spend our daily lives, the low energy state of ordinary consciousness. Just like that physical system locked in the ground state without enough heat to jump the fence, our minds are locked into sharp discrimination. We're constantly categorizing, right? This is good, that's bad, this is me, that's you. The mind becomes highly sensitive to boundaries, constantly reinforcing the energy gaps between conceptual opposites. Think about the gap between internal anxiety and external peace. We experience them as totally separate things because our awareness is trapped in the rigid conditioning of identity. And let's be honest, it is absolutely exhausting to constantly maintain that fence between self and other.
But contrast that with the high energy limit, or the non-dual collapse. In this state, the intense energy of pure awareness totally overwhelms those conceptual gaps. And I want to be clear, this isn't some sleepy or dull state. It is an intense, incredibly vibrant, completely unconstrained state of being. Those intellectual energy gaps that sustain our daily boundaries, they simply evaporate. The rigid division between the observer who is reading a book and the observed book itself completely washes out. It's not spacing out, it's tuning in so completely that the wall between you and the book just dissolves. Because the flood of awareness is so high, all configurations of experience become equally accessible, and they are present simultaneously.
This is a massive, absolutely critical shift in experience. When pure awareness acts as that overwhelming thermal heat, the mind literally stops registering the difference between distinct opposing mental states. Just think about how profound that is for a second. The energy required by your brain to constantly maintain the illusion of separation, to keep rebuilding that heavy, exhausting fence between you and the rest of the universe. It is completely overwhelmed by the sheer volume of open awareness.
Section 2. Maximum entropy, chaos, or pure potential.
Now, what's really interesting about this is that it forces us to flip a very common scientific concept totally on its head. When a physical system reaches that high temperature limit where everything is equally accessible, it reaches maximum entropy. Now, from a strict external physical perspective, maximum entropy is just a flat probability distribution. To an outside observer, it looks like featureless chaos, a total lack of structure, or maybe just static white noise. But from the inside, experientially, this isn't chaos at all. Actually, scratch that. It is pure potential. It is the absolute unconditioned background of existence. Because no single conceptual state is privileged over another, the mind reaches an ultimate state of peace where absolutely everything is possible, but nothing is rigidly forced.
So the crucial point here is that non-duality isn't magic. It can actually be mathematically framed as the thermodynamic limit of a conscious system. When you flood the system with the heat of pure awareness, the illusion of separation just collapses. The boundaries don't even have to be fought or destroyed. As the temperature rises, boundaries simply run out of the energy required to exist. The wall is entirely submerged.
It completely changes how we view our own minds, doesn't it? Our anxieties, our rigid identities, our sense of isolation, they might all just be the low-energy ground states of a system waiting to be flooded. So I want to leave you with this thought to carry with you today. If your deepest mental boundaries are basically just structural energy gaps, what happens in your own life when you finally turn up the heat? Thank you for exploring this fascinating intersection of physics and mind with me today. Keep asking those big questions.